Raver, who was a
Cool
Mason,
name.
Mason and not Catholic.
Oh.
Cardinal sin. They disowned her.
Oh.
So
Because they couldn't be married in the church.
because they couldn't be married in the church. So Liza, he was an engineer for the railroad. He built railroad systems and bridges. So they had money. That house
Lots of money.
that Grandma lived in belonged to her sister. They built that house in Chicago.
Wait. Okay. Say this again.
The house that my grandmother lived in that I showed you the picture
Right,
of,
okay.
that belonged to Liza and her husband. They built that house in Chicago. They had no children. When Liza died, my grandmother, Molly, was the only one that would talk to Liza.
And your grandfather, John, your
Right.
grandfather's name was John.
Right.
He died in that house.
He died in that house?
He died in that house. My mother was taking care of him.
And he was a
had what they
marble
call-
setter or brick marble setter?
Something
He
like
was he did like a stone cutter. He did that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Yeah.
He
Because
stayed in the back
my
bedroom.
dad and Jack tried to find his birth or death certificate in
Yeah.
Chicago, and they had no luck to find him at all.
I think he's buried.
I think he's buried in the
I think
same
he's-
cemetery.
He's buried
as
in Mount Carmel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. I think so.
But then we heard that he could have maybe died up in
No.
Detroit.
He died. My mom took care of him.
My
Because he
mother
had-
had two brothers die at home, Uncle Bill and your dad. Because I know I used to go up. My grandmother was also invalid at that time, and I was the only child. I was an only child for almost 5 years.
Because
So-
Dad remembers him and Uncle Bob got pulled out of the orphanage by
They
one
go
of the
to the-
cousins, and they said, "Be quiet."
Uncles.
The uncles, and said, "Don't tell the church or the orphanage
Yeah.
that your father's passed away because we don't know which way it's gonna fall." We got letters from the orphanage saying, "Hey, you scoundrels,"
Oh, I'm sure that.
because it, you know,
Yeah, because he
You know-
wasn't sending support money
Well,
or
the
something.
weren't. They were supposed
the second killer in the family is that I married my husband. He wasn't dead, and we were married in the rectory. In those days, we couldn't get married in church. So George and I got married in the rectory by the priest.
Now
And
my
now we re-up every 5 years.
when my grandmother was a young girl, she was probably 16 or 17. She went up to Chicago to work as a domestic, and she worked for Flo Ziegfeld.
oh really?
For who?
Flo Ziegfeld, you know, Ziegfeld
Oh, okay.
Follies.
Oh, okay.
She worked, and she was a cook for Flo
And we're
Ziegfeld.
talking about this one.
Yes, your great grandmother. She worked for Flo Ziegfeld. That is how she met our grandfather. He delivered the coal. He worked for
He
the
was
coal.
an orphan.
The
He
coal?
was he was an orphan.
He
He
was an
he
orphan.
would deliver the coal to the house.
So we don't know where his parents.
Yes, he was from Bloomington, Illinois, but both his parents were killed in a carriage accident.
You know what kind of accident?
Carriage.
Carriage
They
accident.
lived on a farm, and then he and his brother both went to live with two different relatives until they came of age. One lived on one farm, one lived on another farm.
Was that like down in Stevenson County?
I'd have to go look and see, but that was in some other written records that I had. And I don't know, I couldn't find his brother again. I think his brother, I don't know where his brother went. I know what his brother's name is, I don't know. But he came to Chicago and got a job working for the People's Gas and Coal Company.
Right.
And then they had the World's Fair. Remember what do they call it?
Right, the
The
White
exposition.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And he worked for them. He was one of the first electricians. You'll notice that in one of the censuses, it comes up that he's listed as an electrician. He's one of the first electricians that was trained by the Gas and Electric Company.
And he died when our mother was
A year and a
a
half.
year old. He had a ruptured appendix.
Oh,
So our grandmother was a widow with 9 children.
right.
And that's where we go back to Liza.
Yeah, Liza, Liza helped my mother, but when my grandmother, got married and had children, she stopped working. But my mom told me this just right before she died. She told me that when Ziegfeld found out that my mother was widowed, he came to her and said, if you need work, I'll give you work. It would be a mitzvah if you'd let me have you work for me. And so she would go and work for them part-time, to help support. But, she still had a huge family. But anyway, when Liza died, she gave
Well, she got sick.
with cancer.
She had cancer.
Cancer.
And Gregor came to my mother and said,
Molly, we
need you now. And so Aunt Mary, who was the oldest girl, took care of the family while my mother went to the house on Greenwood and took care of Aunt Liza.
Because they
until
lived
she
on
got-
Lytle then.
Right.
On Lytle. I've heard that name.
Yeah, Lytle is
Lytle Avenue.